Hey everybody, Sarah here. Welcome back to the garden, our peaceful little oasis for pondering that crazy world out there. Cat Blaque is here with us tonight to tell us why paternalism is bad. Spoiler, it's because he feels left out. Let's see if we can clear up a few things for him, shall we? But first, like the video if you like this kind of content, to let me and the algorithm both definitely know that. And subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this. I even have a Patreon, which you can find in the subscription below if you really want to help support the channel. That would be amazing. Let's see what we got.
When you're a trans woman, there are so many nuances about being a woman in this society that become incredibly clear.
As opposed to cis women who wouldn't understand any of this, I'm sure.
As a trans woman who's often read as cis, I've been in a lot of situations where I've seen people's way of approaching me completely shift after they find out that I'm transgender.
Really?
And for that reason, unless you're a potential intimate partner, I generally don't go around announcing that I'm transgender.
I mean, okay, but you're keeping relevant material facts from others until the very last moment possible. You wonder why that changes their behavior.
While I was fortunate enough to transition young enough to really not know what it's like to be a man in this society, quite a few transgender women will report that they were treated better as women than they were as men. For example, because I have lived a, let's just say, very interesting life, I've often been in situations where I'm stranded in the middle of nowhere with no way of getting home.
Yeah. Gonna butt in here again already, but I've also lived a very interesting life, and that has seldom happened to me. I mean, I've made it a priority to keep that from happening to me. But then I'm cis, so, I guess it's easier for me, or I don't know, it doesn't count.
And people of all genders have often seen me as particularly vulnerable and been willing to offer me a ride home. There are some transgender women who have described this as a newfound so-called female privilege, a privilege that comes in a society that lets men fend for themselves, that offers protection and assistance to women.
All right. So this is the so-called female privilege. We need to keep this in mind because it comes back around later. Men are told to fend for themselves, while women are offered protection and assistance. Bear that in mind.
Recently, I saw this post on Twitter. It's a picture of a gorgeous young Black woman with a very obviously much older white man. And as you can imagine, a lot of people saw this picture and retweeted it, commenting on the age difference. Some applauding the young woman for being able to land a sugar daddy, while other people, mostly Black men, complained about her dating outside of her race. One post by a Black man even said grooming, predatory behavior, and slavery, shaking my damn head. But some people commented under the post that the woman in the picture is actually a trans woman.
Yes, because material facts are relevant.
Once the man who made this post found out that she was transgender, he updated the post with a caption that said, "I just found out something. Never mind, play ball. We love it for you, queen." As a Black woman who has predominantly dated outside of her race, mostly because sentiments like this are fairly popular amongst Black people, I obviously have a lot of opinions about the racial aspect of this.
But we're not really going to go into them, and I'm personally fine with that because that's not why we're here, right? But I do want to say that the slavery reference is relevant whether the Black person in the picture is male or female. There was an older white man, and I don't know. It's questionable. I'm not saying that it's bad, but it's the kind of thing you might want to be like, so what's the story there? It definitely conjures up things, and it's relevant whether it's male or female.
But what stood out to me was that it was predatory behavior, grooming, and slavery when she was a cis woman. But the moment that the woman becomes transgender, not only is it okay, but we love it for you, queen.
Okay. That guy did back off awful fast. I think that's maybe because this was not the fight he thought he was picking. And it almost seems like it invoked like a fight or flight response. Invoked a fight or flight response in this guy. Came on real strong, and then he was like, whoa, never mind, you do you. Good, peace, because he didn't feel like being canceled and, fired from his job for having views that don't deserve to be protected in a civilized society. But, the age difference is still a big deal. Grooming is not good for anybody. he dropped it that quickly because he didn't feel like being attacked.
There's obviously a lot to be said about what this sudden shift means for transgender women, but looking at this post, what also stood out to me was that there's another implication that says exactly how this guy feels about Black cis women. Now, the obvious reason for the switch in tone is that cis women can get pregnant and transgender women can't.
The obvious reason for the shift in tone is that trans women are men. That matters.
What this Black cis man is communicating is that Black cis women are simply vessels for Black children, and that breaking away to procreate with a white man is a personal slight to him.
Wow, I think that's a pretty broad reading of what that guy said. Maybe he saw shades of Jefferson and objects to the continuing of this tradition. Just a thought,
Now, obviously, there's a lot of danger that comes with being a young cis woman who is impregnated by an older, potentially abusive man. However, I think there's so
we swung from white to potentially abusive really fast.
much to be parsed by this reaction, this sort of switch in tone when they realize that the woman they're protecting doesn't have the possibility to bear children.
No. That's because he's a man. Okay. I feel like, do most men go around pondering, a random woman's gestational capacity when deciding whether or not to hit on her? It's a question.
Recently, I made the mistake of locking myself out of my apartment, and there's a guy in my apartment complex who very obviously has some sort of crush on me. And I was stressing out about getting into my apartment, and he saw that I was in distress and offered to help. He ran into his apartment, grabbed his tools, and was willing to rip the door off of the wall so that I could get into the apartment.
I bet he was.
Now, I decided to call some friends and stay with some friends for the night before calling my landlord and getting them to open up the door for me. But long story short, this guy was willing to rip off a door for me because he saw me as vulnerable and deserving of protection.
He was willing to do that because he saw you in a moment of need and wanted to be the hero who gets the girl. Okay? He was trying to get some action. He, as a straight guy, saw what he perceived to be a young woman and tried to get some action out of that. Okay? He was trying to get laid up.
But the problem is that this guy only ever sees me in passing and has no idea that I'm transgender. And while I've never taken up his many offers to hold my mail or to be a handyman around my apartment, I know that he would feel foolish if I did, and he later found out that I was transgender.
Okay, so this applies for any female living person who is unavailable for whatever reason. Okay. They only need to see you in passing to get kind of an eye on you. Okay. And you can demur from every attempt at contact that they make. And some of them really just do not want to get a clue.
But of course, there's nothing about holding my mail or taking some screws off of my door frame that requires me to have biology that is consistent to what he personally finds attractive.
No, but that is why he did it, because he's trying to get laid.
But in these interactions, it's very obvious that there's a subtext that says that these things have to be in alignment if I am to receive that protection or assistance.
No, the subtext is that he's trying to manipulate the young woman who he thinks you are, okay, by either getting on your good side and getting you to like him, or by incurring, an emotional debt to use as leverage to get some action out of you, because he's trying to get laid.
And sure, there's plenty of men who are going to be willing to help me regardless, but it's perfectly clear to me that most of the time when men try to help or protect me, they're only doing so because they believe that it's possible that one day I might bear children.
That's really weird. I don't know that the average individual guy in the moment is really thinking about that, and if he is, it seems to me that it would be pretty convenient for him if you didn't get pregnant. He's just looking to get some action. He's not looking to start a family.
So that means that their help and protection is entirely conditional. And if that's not true,
no, yeah, it's true. Their help is absolutely conditional. And the minute, oh, how many times has this happened to me? The minute they finally figure out that nothing is going to happen, they disappear, right? Suddenly they just can't be bothered to even speak to you anymore. It's really the damnedest thing. And sometimes it can really hurt. Truth. So, my heart goes out to you there. Been there. But, why is some random dude pondering your eventual children? He's not.
why would it matter if the woman who they assisted turned out to be transgender?
Because he's straight and you're a dude.
I've had a lot of conversations with men about their desire to protect women. And the thing that they always mention is that I have that thing that is so beautiful and amazing.
What is it do you think that we're talking about here? What is the beautiful, amazing thing these fellas are referencing that attracts them to this person? Guy looks you up and down and says, you got that thing. You think he's talking about your organs?
And that thing often is referring to the uterus and the vagina that I don't have.
And when do men go around thinking about women's uteruses outside the context of childbirth, much less telling us how beautiful they are? What is that? No, that would be a weird day, and I would ask him if he were on drugs, whoever he was.
Knowing that I don't have those things, it makes the conditional nature of this assistance so clear.
No, the assistance is conditional upon being female. And, it's patronizing, paternalistic, controlling garbage. It's awful. We all know that. And you can sense it, but of course you're seeing it through the lens of whatever this is you got going on here. So it's not exactly... Clarity is lacking.
To be perfectly honest, I've never felt protected in this world, and I've never anticipated protection. It's perfectly clear to me that as a transgender woman, I'm expected to protect myself.
Okay, but so back at the beginning you said that female privilege was women are offered protection and assistance while men are required to fend for themselves. So you're saying that society treats you like a man. I wonder why.
And I'm also expected to stomach all of the negative things that come with being seen as a woman in this world without ever expecting that anyone would protect me.
All right, now wait just a minute here. The shit that women have to put up with in life is not a quid pro quo for this protection and assistance from random dudes. That is controlling, like I said. Okay. It's part of the controlling patriarchy, that's part of how they control women's behavior in our society. And it's not the exchange. I mean, what is this the antebellum South, like gentility and whatever? I mean, like, what is this, old England? Come on.
I say in almost every video that I've been doing this for a very long time because I've been making these videos and having these conversations for most of my life at this point. And the one...
Just a thought. Maybe it's time to move on.
The thing that has become very clear to me with time is that people have a very hard time seeing transgender women as vulnerable. People have a hard time seeing transgender women as even capable of experiencing abuse.
So, again, you're saying that they see transgender women like they see men, like they're men, because, men are perceived as unable to be abused or, that's one of the big reasons I think that men underreport their mental health problems to such an extent, and they would rather kill themselves than go talk to a therapist. It's because to do so risks losing your man card.
And when they do experience abuse, people often blame their transition. I've spoken before about my experiences being groomed by an older man when I was younger. And one of the things that was very clear to me was that I had no path to have conversations about this because people would just sort of look at it as something that came with being who I was.
Now I'm going to flip that around for you, actually, and say that it comes with what you've done. Because that's what womanhood is. You know, women are expendable. So congratulations. Now you're expendable too.
When I experienced sexual violence for the second time in my life, I remember coming to two of my cis girlfriends and finally getting the courage to express that this was something that happened to me. And their reaction to the story that I told them about me being violated was, what did you expect?
Yeah. It's not because you're trans. It's because people see you as a woman. Okay? You're not that special, honey. What do you expect when you become a woman? Because that's how women are treated.
Society is all too eager to buy into the narrative that transgender women are violent and pushy people who want to force themselves on others.
Well, insisting night and day that you be seen and treated like something that you are not is pretty much the very definition of pushy.
But in truth, you're more likely to find a transgender woman who is the victim of violence than you are to find a transgender woman who is the perpetrator of it.
That is true of everyone. The percentage of any group who are actually perpetrators of violent crime is very small. But they're prolific and they make us all look bad, don't they?
But as I said, even in those situations of violence that often happens at the hand of our intimate partners.
Yep. Just like everyone else.
What a lot of people don't understand is that when you express these sentiments, you're communicating to the people who want to harm transgender people that they can do it and get away with it. You're providing them an out, a handy excuse.
You mean like self-ID? Gosh, you know, when that guy in the Wii Spa, dare I mention it, was predating on those women and that little girl, he sure had a handy excuse, didn't he?
Personally, I'm acutely aware of the fact that if I were ever murdered, there would be a lot of people who would rush to use my gender as the justification for why I was, which is why I try my damnedest not to put myself in those situations.
Wait, what? So you avoid getting killed because of what other people would say? I mean, surely that's not the only reason. But, like, what a thing to fixate on. I can't get murdered. What will people think?
One of the most disappointing aspects of this particular post that I'm talking about is that there were a lot of cis women under that post trying to basically draw attention to the fact that the woman in the pictures was transgender, as though her being transgender would make the grooming less impactful. The subtext of the argument being made here is that grooming is something that could only possibly be traumatic to a cis woman.
I feel like that's what you're getting from it. Because pointing out the material facts of a situation, you know, is fairly neutral and can, you know, point towards various things. It changes the dynamic of the picture. Because the biological sex of the people involved, the material facts involved in any given circumstance matter. You know, grooming is bad for anyone. And I'm very sorry to hear that it happened to you. I can't help but wonder if it has anything to do with the present situation. I don't know you, so I'm not going to sit here and try and psychoanalyze you, but it begs the question.
To this day, I am still working to unpack the trauma that I experienced when I was groomed as a teenager. And one of the things that makes unpacking trauma so complicated for me is this understanding that a lot of society sees me as somebody who is incapable of experiencing trauma because of my gender. Now, for the record, the woman in this picture is actually in her late 20s, and from the way that she posted this picture, I doubt that she's actually being groomed, but my points still stand.
I'm not actually sure that that's relevant. A 20-year age gap is still a 20-year age gap, which is, leaves a question mark hanging in the air there. And how in the world you can possibly know that from one social media post? I have no idea.
I think that how society turns its back on transgender women in vulnerable situations says quite a bit about how it views women in general.
I agree with you there. If it views you as a woman, it's going to treat you as a woman. And women are expendable, right? I'm actually going to show you something for once. Look at this. We should focus on the real threats to women, not the threats that, while I appreciate that some of these views are very sincerely held, in my view, are not valid. So says the First Minister of Scotland regarding a women's rape crisis shelter that is being headed by a trans woman, a dude. As if it's so ridiculous that rape victims would want to be away from male-bodied people. That is like the point of rape crisis shelters. Look at this picture. Guy, this dude wearing a mask that says feminist as fuck and a t-shirt that says kill the turf. So my telling them that they're not women is justification for shit like this. Not mine necessarily, personally, this fellow, but I've gotten stuff, violent threats. Just like we all have, I think. It's great, right? All right, let's finish up here.
And I think that the cis women who align themselves with this mindset should be aware of the indirect communication that they are only worthy of protection if they are potential vessels for children.
No, that's not what the communication is. And we're perfectly well aware of what paternalist protection, that controlling bullshit that men do. Like, we're aware of this.
Just food for thought.
Yeah. Exclude us at your peril, lest men begin to see you as the baby makers that you are. Ooh. Right, yeah, because that's never happened. But just to sum up, I love how there's always this insistence of like a special pain, a special trauma, right? And yet then out the other side of their mouths, they're like, but we're just like all the other women. Why won't you treat us like all the other women? Pick one. But I know you won't. Because that tension, that struggle is really what you're hooked on, right? If there are no more frontiers to pioneer, then what are we living for? I mean, I guess, but like womanhood is not a frontier. No, for you to pioneer, it's not. It's occupied. Yeah. By us. So get your own spaces. And then this can all be over. Who's the aggressor here? Who's the abusive one here? Anyway, that's a little dark. This person is obviously very confused and has filtered his experience of misogyny through the trans woman lens, which gives everything that extra sheen of oppression, that extra sheen of validation. But it's not accurate. It's not how women experience the world. It's not how patriarchy actually works. You can't decide to opt out of how a system works and then try and criticize it from the inside, because that's bunk. Okay. And keeping material details from the people involved in a given situation until the very last minute is borderline abusive on your own part. But I suppose you can't be abusive because you're such a victim. You can only punch up, right? I have to say, I sincerely disagree. But I wish you well, and I hope things get better for you, hun. This has been Sarah, out here in the garden, pondering some of that craziness out there, and I will see you next time. I'm going to go find some more. Bye.